Brian, I'm super excited because like if anyone who is more nerdy about PPC, this guy right here, Jared,
Oh,
is. Jared, do you
100%.
remember back in
Yeah.
the days we were trying to use Excel to
Oh yeah.
recreate a match type, like literally recombination all the possible words in orders and from search terms to create the search query and like keywords reports match type that we have right now.
Yep. Now I'm
Um,
super excited to be here for sure.
Jared is in the industry for a while. Jared, can you give everybody kind of quick like introduction on
Sure.
what you've been working on?
I've been in the industry for 20, 21 years, I think 21, 22 years, something like that. And and yeah, it's from back when it was a whole different ballgame with multiple search engines. Literally at the beginning it was things like Yahoo and stuff. So like that was a big deal at the time. Obviously, that's not a big deal anymore. So at this point, you've seen the whole evolution. Yeah, obviously you had heavy hands and worked with you. Worked with you both at different periods of time, exactly, for about 10 years, I think. So since then I've been 10 years, a little over 10 years at my own company, SEMoptimize. Absolutely love it. We focus on all things Google ads, Bing ads, social as well, but I would say we definitely have a heavier dose of all things Google ads, Bing ads, with a real heavy hand in anything with like a long-term sales cycle. I would say is more detailed sales cycle stuff is more of our bread and butter.
That's awesome, and we're gonna dig a lot into the paid search and digest that a lot more. Jared, before we jump any further, I know you also do a lot of improv, so I want to give a little shout out. Tell people a little bit about what you do in the improv career wise.
Oh, yeah. It's my new favorite addiction for sure. Improv comedy is like, I've been doing it for about 2 years, and I probably spend almost every evening in some way, shape, or form somehow.
You have a show
Too many
coming up,
evenings.
right?
It's a
I look it up. It's like
disproportionate amount of evenings
it
that I
has Rise
spend.
Camp. You have a show
Rise
coming
comedy,
up,
yeah.
and is it called like Batman? Batman. Tell us a little bit the show.
Oh,
And you're
Bad
gonna be a
Bubblegum. So
Joker.
yeah, I've got a team called Bad Bubblegum, a team called Minor Adjustments. That one is a musical improv. So
Nice.
essentially making up songs on the fly with like a musical accompanist and like in an entire theatrical production of like a story made up from nothing. It's pretty great. It's fun. I gotta tell you, come try it.
Do you play
That's
improv
amazing.
games with
A
your
little
friends,
bit.
Jared?
Ours is more.
Yeah,
We do a little bit. Actually, I'm doing that tonight. I'm on a show
yeah.
tonight that
I
that
wanna
does
maybe try.
short
Brian,
form
you wanna
game.
play maybe an improv game? Let's all maybe jump on one.
We can
Jared,
do
you wanna
Yeah.
try
that.
it?
Let's do that.
It's a yes and, right? So you have to. So
Right.
I was thinking
Tonight,
since
come
we are
down to Rise
doing
Comedy. We'll do
advertising,
something.
since we're doing advertising, so maybe my thought is like we do improv on slogans that won't sell. So like maybe
Oh,
the promises is
so.
you throw a brand and you go like a slogan that won't sell. So like the one I have is like maybe like for Nike you can say Nike, please don't try.
Oh, jeez. Let's see.
And Leo, are we thinking of like famous big brands for this, or like
Oh
Give
yeah,
me a
yeah, for
brand. Give me a
sure.
brand.
yeah?
Nationwide, nationwide
I
is
feel like I'm going to get a hot take here. This is-
Well, no,
nationwide
like
is stalking you.
Apple could be like think the same as everyone else.
exactly. Apple. I'm cool, right? How
Yeah.
about that? Yeah.
Like Apple, please use Windows, please.
Yeah, exactly.
What
Yeah.
terrible ideas, don't you think?
No, yeah, no. It's not quite it. It's not quite it. I was like, I do this all the time, but it definitely has to be random and organic, or it doesn't like work.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I just want you to
Well,
like get all that note out of the way. But you can see it's all good here. Jared, I know you're all jokes aside.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
you very heavy into paid search industry. You have all kinds of phase of iteration with Google and Yahoo, all these companies, and the search world really has evolved in a lot. And so today, can you tell me a little bit about like the verticals that you focus on?
Yes, I would say like we have a whole spectrum of verticals that we work within, but I would say with the commonality, well, I would say the biggest subvein is that is anything with like a longer sales cycle. So it tends to be like B2B, B2B tech, stuff like that, that just doesn't happen in a pure transaction on a single visit to a site often, right? So it's more like, people coming in the door and getting a little bit of information, and that's one piece of their whole life cycle from getting to a bigger, much more large-scale solution sort of purchase or something. So it tends to be that because in the realm of like, we used to do, we've done plenty over time, but we used to do a lot more e-commerce and stuff. Let's say we do a little bit less of that than we have. We still have some for sure, and then any just like B2C lead gen is still a thing for sure. That still is a big part, but I would say our bread and butter has become with anything that just a little bit more complicated, because I would say those are the things that like Google in particular, I would say struggles a little bit more about, just simply because there are much more search queries out there for people looking for consumer-focused products than a business person looking for a very specific subset of solutions. So it becomes a more difficult road to or vertical, area to traverse. So that difficulty is good for
Brian,
us.
I know you
win.
also in B2B, but you're more like e-commerce focused, right?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of e-com, but a lot of them are B2B e-com, which is definitely an interesting niche. But yeah, Jared, it sounds like yours are like maybe more SaaS products, big brands, tech brands. Yeah. And so I'm curious, like with that, what's the average kind of sales life cycle look like? Is it 6 to 12 months? Is it longer than that in some cases?
Yeah, 6 to 12 months, very common in that realm. When you go beyond the 12 months, it's no more difficult for us in terms of like how to get that qualified lead in and something that'll actually move along, but it's more difficult in the it just becomes more difficult for the client to we have such a long time before the value starts to snowball, right? But so I really do love that stuff that's in that 6 to 12 months category, because you can start to get it within a reasonable amount of time, and you start to see the early indicators of real success and people actually buying that sort of stuff. But 6 to 12 months, very, very common life cycle, I would say, for what we deal with.
And I'm curious too, if you're optimizing a lot towards that initial lead, the initial form fill, initial call, or are you guys optimizing toward sales qualified lead, marketing qualified lead, like in Google Ads? Like, what does that look like across your clients?
100%. That's exactly what we do. So we obviously they've really improved obviously the ability to pump that data in more readily. We've over time come up with our own solutions to do that, and on the back end be able to analyze this stuff in much more detail. But obviously the integrations like Salesforce, HubSpot, et cetera, different CRMs makes it extremely viable for us to pump that information in. I would say the key is right, when you have a giant amount of data, right, you're spending $1 billion and every month, and you've got just a huge amount of data coming through. Well, that sort of automation that comes off of that you see on Google side can really work really well, because that has a massive amount of data. When you're the rest of the world that is medium and large, but like not gigantic, right? Well, that data becomes much more fragmented. So, and it naturally isn't going to have a 100% match rate between what you're pumping in from Salesforce and what actually goes in as like a qualified lead and someone moving down the funnel. So I would say bridging the gap of that, where like, sure, in a world where gigantic data exists 100% of the time for every single client, there's a lot that's super powerful that can be done in a very readily available way in like Google Ads. But when you're anything below that, it's a lot more difficult. I'm sure you've had experience of it when you've got a campaign that has one qualified lead that comes every 4 days or something like that. Like that nature is a whole different ball game than. But fundamentally, that's what we're going for is qualified leads that'll take steps to the next process, and then tracking every step of that throughout the way, so that we're fundamentally optimizing towards an end result of, depending on the client, it'll be an actual sale or maybe a particular meeting step or something with the right executives. So the right at bat, essentially, right, with a qualified lead. Whether or not they close it is that still depends on their product fundamentally. But
I think you guys touched base on a couple of things. So length of sales cycle sounds like 6 to 12 months, common sweet spot, but there's a little bit about this data kind of misaligned between what Google can do and what the actual sales cycle you can capture. So you guys also talk a little bit about data. Jared, before we dig too much deeper into that, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what do you see high level as some of the biggest challenge or pain points for your B2B clients?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's for B2B in particular, like, when you look at the way Google matches, and the same is true not just from its keywords, but also the way it matches different audience segments and stuff. There's a larger struggle with finding the person who is an executive who makes decisions for a marketing brand. They're just by sheer count, there are far fewer of them than there are people, right? Just people, like, right? So, like, in the population. So it's a tiny sliver of the population that you're trying to thread the needle to. And it's in that the natural inclination that Google has to match two things with broader, larger impression counts and stuff like that causes this tug of war that constantly exists, where if you lean too heavily on Google's matching out based on certain things, well, it'll find the human segments of that, not the person with the right level of expertise and the right decision-making capabilities at an organization. So just by sheer count, there's a constant tug of war. So I would say in general, we find anyway, that when it's more like a B2C situation, we have much more success with leaning on some of those things for Google. But in a B2B context, we end up having to adjust it and control it in a whole different way.
I think Brian, you're experiencing some of the similar stuff, don't you? Right? So like it's like you're because it's like Jared is saying that it's such a small amount of data points, and also they get lost in this, and also depending on the product you sell, right? In your case, it could be B2C as well. It gets cluttered in, and it becomes harder to really hit them effectively, right?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things too that like we struggle with, and Jared, one of our bigger clients is like commercial recycling bins, commercial trash cans. So they're selling $40,000 sales to, Tesla, big corporations.
Yep.
But the buyers still search trash cans, still search recycling bins,
exactly.
right? Like we've tried to only focus on commercial recycling bins, industrial recycling bins, and the volume just isn't there. And so we've tested this out over the years, and it has been a little bit of a struggle. The owner of that company has finally been like, okay, we do need to be live on these broad terms. Maybe we're not bidding so aggressively. But you brought up something too that I'm curious on how do you layer on audiences that maybe get you closer to finding the decision makers at these big companies, and you're not getting just a casual person searching, for a SaaS platform, Do you guys use any audiences directly, like natively in Google Ads that are layered on to like your search campaigns, or do you guys use any third-party partners for that?
Definitely. So it just depends on the client, but plenty of clients have decent lists, like people who interact with the different like trade shows and stuff like that, and just again, it's a sales cycle, so they've got all these people entered in at one point in time. So but it's a fundamental problem of the match rates and stuff. So sometimes you get a decent enough segment when you upload those lists, and sometimes you really don't. And so you always use them if it's available, like 100% of the time. There's no reason not to. But it's definitely when you're talking about, like if you've got a list of 5,000 people or something, well, and you can only get a match rate of maybe you get like 1,000 if you're lucky. You might be barely at the level where you can actually start to target them, so it doesn't give you a lot to work with. So it's somewhere in between, so you use it as much as it is available, but obviously because it's not 100% match rate, you have to still use other things, and that's just the quality of the search term, and then optimizing towards what actually happens. Because exactly what you're talking about, like, you do still need to be on that. Now, ideally, commercial trash cans, industrial trash cans, like trash can service provider, stuff like that. Like, those are words that are more likely to be not Jim buying a trash can for his house, right?
Yeah.
It's somebody else, but some people will search for just trash cans still. So, by nature, you just have to figure out what that is and how that balances out. Hold on.
Sarah's going to take a live call here.
Good.
Yeah, I'm going to pause real quick.
No worries. But I'm excited to kind of hear Jared's opinions on campaign structure, Leo, when he gets back, and how things have changed in the last 10 years, right? When it used to be a lot of manual builds, and I'm curious if you still, doing a lot of that manual build.
I'm actually curious if he does anything still. let's
True Green
face
showed
it.
up
Like,
at the door. True Green
no,
showed up at the door.
Jared, we're
Oh,
about
nice.
to like talk a little bit about like I know you have it's just kind of where we are at. Right? We talk about some challenge, sales cycle, data challenge, touching points. Right? We talk about sort of like easy. It's not very easy to find that specific spot that you're trying to target, and you also have limited data. These are all challenges. And now I want to kind of jump in, sort of like, what do you guys do? Like on Google, like what is your go-to like punch?
I mean, obviously, tip of the spear is still search for us. At the end of the day, it's still the most qualified thing because their intent is actively seeking the thing you are giving, offering. So it is the tip of the spear, but it's usually not where we stop, right? So I would say we tend to use search, and that means multiple things, right? So it doesn't just mean just pure paid search. It can mean the AI Max and stuff like that because that's a new feature.
And then we'll dive into AI Max in a bit as well. I know that's very exciting as well. And I'm sure you do PMAX.
Yeah, exactly. PMAX stuff. Now we tend to, again, it just depends. So I've found that PMAX, well, let me put it this way. So PMAX, when it first came out, worked really well for certain things and then didn't work very well for other things. And in my experience, B2B is one of those that I really kind of struggled with. Because of the same thing, its inclination to try to find the more amount of people that it could match to and find, right? And so it's a giant learning curve that when you talk about giant learning curves in Google, by nature you're talking about lots of money that a client has to spend before they reach a point where magically it works perfectly, right? So it's like that's whatever time you have, like your search campaigns, your bid optimization is learning, right? Well, the fundamental thing is it's learning with dollars. So, and dollars and time, right? So you need to find the balance of that. So certain things, PMAX works really well for e-commerce, quite frankly. I've had it work very well for that.
And you say dollar and time because, PMAX compared to search, you have less control and flexibility.
But that's changed over time. So now there's
as well, yes. But on a PMAX, you have more volume scan. You can really massively expand there. It's just more, what you're looking for is both that volume and niche at the same time.
Yeah, so we found with PMAX in particular, like, if you've got the good enough assets and stuff, it was successful in certain areas. We didn't like that at first, that you couldn't like Gmail used to be actually a very great place for B2B leads in particular, because you have people actively in email accounts, and that's another solid place to target. So when that first got rolled up, it was unfortunate, for lack of a better word, because it put it with other things that weren't quite as good. So it watered down the performance.
What about these other formats like demand gen? Do you do any of these like
demand
YouTube?
Gen, yes.
Okay.
So we tend to use, I would say, the second. So we've search in general is still the tip of the spear. Our next thing tends to be demand gen or other distribution within Google that can use the custom intent keyword audiences. So custom intent keyword audiences are like the next best thing. Someone who recently searched for these things, which is like one step out from that pure intent that's active to recent pure intent that's...
It's a pockets of intent.
So, and I've got a question just on PMAX. So, because a lot of people say that it just doesn't work for lead gen or it's really, really tough. Now, are you guys seeing where that is regularly like in your mix where it might be still majority search, but in a lot of your accounts, you do have PMAX kind of that is working alongside search?
I would say it's about a third of our accounts have a successful PMAX that works. I mean, just because of the nature of what we have. Like it really, I would say none of our, I mean, it's not that we haven't tested them, it's just that they just don't wash out. Like they tend to not be able to be that successful. Cause specifically, it's like a lead isn't good enough, right? It's a lead that is qualified that could potentially become a customer. So that separation is the problem. So we end up getting a lot of noise when it comes to it, when it comes to lead gen. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but we definitely see it. I mean, you just have to price it right, because when there wasn't a lot to do, that you could limit it down, like knock out certain distribution, etc. Negatives didn't exist there for a long time, but they do now. So that's the thing, is there's more levers now that exist that allow us to optimize that. So we're more bullish on PMAX now than we ever were, because now you finally gave us back the ability to like, oh, we don't like certain distribution. Great, we can actually block
Yeah.
that. Oh, you
Yeah.
don't want to show us the queries. Thanks.
Now they show you a ton of them, and it's
Yeah.
awesome, right? And there's a
Yes.
new channel performance report that's out now. At least it's
Exactly.
in beta. We're starting to see that rolled out in some of our accounts. So,
Exactly.
PMAX, and you said exactly what we see. Like for e-commerce, I mean, we still run standard shopping. I'd say
Yeah.
maybe 60% it's going to be PMAX across our
Yeah.
accounts, and then 40% it might be standard shopping, depending on the case. But I'm curious if you could give like just a rough percentage of for the clients that you have,
Yep.
what that spend distribution is. Is it like search? Is a certain percent, and then it's demand gen, and then maybe it's a little PMAX or it's old school like remarketing. Kind of curious what that mix looks like generally.
I would say the mix is definitely like something to the effect of probably like 75% search still,
Okay.
and then demand gen / multiple ways to target within the network. But demand gen tends to be
Yeah.
the one that we use most frequently, and even that we're retargeting within demand gen. You know what I mean?
Same.
So it's like
Yeah.
it's
That's
more
what
like,
we're doing.
Yeah.
The-
That's definitely because like pure retargeting, I find just is it's not as good as
Yeah.
We saw the same thing, and I don't know, Leo, if you've seen that in some of your accounts, but it just seems like demand gen is the new vehicle for remarketing in accounts. Obviously, PMAX has some remarketing layered into it
exactly.
to some degree, but demand gen, you obviously have a lot more control, over that. And just while we're talking about search, before we get to like, AI Max and some of the new stuff, I
Yeah.
know back in the day when we, we're learning PPC from Jared, we would do these crazy big keyword builds, right? You have
Yeah.
all the different iterations, you have
Jared
exact
Schroder.
match phrase. And so I'm curious, how you guys are doing builds these days. Is it still the same where you're trying to break out, every word, or are you leaning on like the better matching that Google has now?
It's somewhere in between. So we don't
Yeah.
go as far as we used to. Hold on, I got another ring.
No, you're good. busy man
Jared
over
is so
here.
busy.
Apparently, I'll be right back.
Right on.
So I'm definitely curious about what Jared has. What do you guys have actually on your search side? What is your distribution?
What do we do?
Yeah.
Like, what's the distribution? So we're heavily e-commerce. So in those cases, I'd say it's probably 60 to even 80% on the high end is going to be shopping, whether it's standard shopping or PMAX. Maybe about 10%, 15% is search.
Are you Jared?
About,
Are you Jared?
I'm just inviting people to ring my doorbell right now. Apparently, I literally have
Yeah,
no
no
one
worries.
ever come to my house and like right on a call. We're like,
No, it's all good. We're gonna keep all of this in there, so it's actually more real.
yeah.
we can edit this.
So I think Jared, help us break down a little bit about your search structure. What do you guys focus these days in search?
Yeah, so like we still run super deep keyword lists, but that doesn't stay the whole time. So we will typically build an intensely detailed structure, but that doesn't mean that they'll stay, right? So like because if they can't get distribution fundamentally, they don't have a large enough search volume. Well, then we'll end up deleting those out, right? So it's not like they're permanent, but we definitely attempt to go as granular as we can go. And the benefit of that really comes down to like matching control is one part of that, where we can actually control where those matches tend to go, because Google has gotten more and more intense with the way they match.
Yeah. I was going to say loose, but intense.
So I assume you don't do any
Creative.
broad
They've got more
Yeah.
creative with the way they
They're very extensively creative.
And so it's
so,
less than it used to be in terms of how detailed we used to go, but we still attempt a detailed structure. And one of the big parts of that is you got to think the ad strength, right? That's a big limiter on whether or not you're going to get good distribution. And one of those main parts of that is the keyword in your ad test. So no matter what, you still need groups that are tight with the keywords so that your ads for sure mention the right things, right? So if you have too many keywords in an ad group, now there's one way to do that is you could just be very, very broad and generic and have only one ad group with one word, and then sure, you could say that one word, right? But that will cost you very much in the long run, and we're happy to take over your account afterwards.
So it sounds like you're saying
when that has failed you, we're happy to take over your account. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
No,
sounds like
but
you're saying
essentially,
the good
fundamentally,
practice-
somewhere in between. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It's
So
not
the
as
good
detailed
part
as
is of that, detailed theme to increase relevancy across the board from keywords as
exactly.
well as how the tied up with the ads still, it's a principle you guys practice a lot.
Yeah, and that just allows us to have like ad strengths that are super strong, excellence, great stuff like that. We don't want too much below that, so we get maximum distribution potential. But it's also for control. We know that we're going to have, but at the same time, it still fundamentally is tight keywords to tight ad groups. We don't want to vary too far off of that, simply because. But for us, we've built the ability to create that structure in a very easy way. Like we have very simple ways that we can create very dynamic, deep structure. So it's not a hindrance to our ability to do that, nor is it a hindrance in our ability to track. And it also helps us, especially in the B2B side, because we're talking, lead quality is what we're talking about. Well, the keyword layer is a fuzzy layer, right? So the actual search term is the detailed reality. The keyword layer is a fuzzy layer. It's not near a one-to-one situation, right? So when we're talking about lead quality, if you're just matching everything to a broad match keyword, this is the simplification of it, but if you're just matching everything to the broad match keyword, well, that thing doesn't equal one thing. It equals thousands of things. So from we're looking for marketing qualified leads that can turn into sales. Well, thousands of things is not very helpful for us. A pocket
Right.
of themes is very helpful for us.
So does that rule out broad match? Do you guys use
I was
any
just going
broad
to ask
match at all?
that. Just what your match type strategy is these days too. Like,
I can tell you right now. I mean, you're fundamentally doing broad match no matter what you're doing in Google.
right.
So-
Even exact match is broad-ish, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So
I
that's
get
the thing
that
is,
part.
so-
I get that part. But that's why you
Yeah.
don't do broad because phrases.
We don't do that much broad match. We certainly
Okay.
do some,
Yeah.
and it would
Okay.
depend on where we are in an account, like
Okay.
how much data we already have. We might be more exploratory with some broad match early on, but fundamentally, I mean, if you're doing phrase match, if you're doing broad match. The
Right.
question is how broad, right?
Yeah, because we've seen that a ton where, and I always say that like, exact match is almost like what phrase match used to be. Phrase is what broad used to be. Broad is super broad. And just another question on this is, from a campaign structure standpoint, are you breaking out campaigns by match type?
So there's more argument for it now, I would say, than there was previously. So we previously did not do that because we were able to control it with the way we bid in like a tiered structure. So essentially making sure the data aggregates towards the exacts and the more specific long tail things versus aggregating on the phrase or the broads, right? Allows it to optimize, chase the data appropriately, and then chase that data towards where we want it to go. And that's where we build that structure. But when we're talking about like nowadays, Google's starting to, we've definitely seen it in our accounts where they're just deleting words that like they don't think are big enough or whatever, and you're like, oh, thanks for that. Well, then you check back on an account and you're like, I know we had more words than this. So that says, in that nature now, because they see exact and phrase of the same keyword text as a same word, and they're using that to remove duplication. So it used to be that you could opt into that through the auto recommendations tab. Well, now I don't know if you've noticed this, but sometimes without that being, it's just happening. I'm like, magical keyword disappearances are happening, and you're like, interesting, and they're not in your change history.
Right.
So,
yeah, we've seen all sorts of weird stuff like that where we know something is, whether it's a system or it's a rep, pushing something there.
Well, it's like it used to show up at least in the change history as like, oh, Google's system made this change, but like conveniently now that's not in your change history, so now you have to just know that it happened. Which is
it sounds like Google really wants to like you to really trust their robust AI system, and they can take care of these like very low level phrase matching, all these like things that we think we still need to control it.
When you got to think for basic, so this is the way I've always looked at it. It's like fundamentally, it's like at the core, Google succeeds when we get what we want as well as advertisers and marketers, but there's a middle ground there. So like, if you're a big advertiser running these enterprise clients and stuff like that, and you succeeding equals you spending more, and then there's but everywhere in between, you got to think companies that don't have expertise in this stuff, well, them running a campaign they just throw together with what the best they've figured out from YouTube or whatever is probably not as good as what some of this automation can be. So like a PMAX with just like basic setup around it is probably better for them. That's not tends to be better for people who do have a little bit more knowledge and ability to go deeper in this stuff and control it, right? Like we have the ability to control it. And so you and to ride the wave, right? So because you have something that's stable and constant and working all the time, and you're really kind of cementing that performance, and the algorithm's kind of doubling down on the good stuff. Well, then all of a sudden, a pocket of queries comes out of nowhere, and or search terms comes out of nowhere and blows up your data. Well, that volatility that's happening underneath the surface is where, like, no, you just have to ride that out. And yeah, Google will eventually figure out that pocket is bad. But the beauty of the word eventually is dollars. So it's like anything you're talking about, eventually Google's automation will get you there. Eventually equals the word dollars, right? So when you're in budget. And so
and bad algorithm before that happens.
Exactly. So like literally nowadays, I don't know how much time. I mean, I'm sure Brian, you're always in the search query reports too, the search term reports. But like fundamentally, it's like we live there. But over the years, it used to be you saw pretty much every single search term that happened, and now you see probably depending on the client, like half of them.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Because it's still obviously it's still worth going through it. But you bring up a good point that I just was kind of thinking about of the size of the advertiser and the savviness of the advertiser, and maybe this is a good segue into AI Max, because if you have $5,000 a month, $3,000 a month, a tiny budget, and you set up a search campaign, click the AI Max button, you might not even know what's going on there, right? You don't know that it's converting to broad and then it's auto creating ads, and I think that's a cool technology for us to play around with. Yeah. And I'm curious for you guys, it sounds like you have a pretty good strategy for building out accounts, and it's you still have a level of control there. So I am curious if you guys have tested AI Max yet, and if you've seen good results with that.
We've been testing it since it released, and it's about half of them it's been a positive thing, and half of them it's not. So So my opinions on AI Max are it's essentially fundamentally like a super broad match, like a super broad match. Like if you go look at the search terms it's generating, it's one step up from what exists is already broad, right? It's one step further. Now eventually it'll hone that in, and you still have the ability to add negatives and to control it. But because you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg on the search terms, like we just talked about, what's happening below the surface, it's hard to just accept that. But fundamentally though, it's been good for some, but what its biggest flaw has been for the ones we've seen it not work is its tendency to backwards match. So like you've got a word like and you'll see it, like you got a word like AWS security or something like that. Well, all of a sudden you're matching to AWS or security.
Okay.
Like that backwards match is one of the most difficult things to handle, because it can take it anywhere and kind of go these veins of things you're like, well, I had never had to police that far down before in the search queries, and now you're like, whoa, like what and now we're talking about, especially in the realm of like B2B, those things are really dangerous, going backwards, because you lose that context of that one word, and that's not the same thing at all, right?
And it's like everybody who works at AWS is going to their site or whatever,
you're like,
clicking on ads, Yeah, and the other thing I've heard with it, and we haven't tested it too much yet, but I've heard too it can open up just to a ton of competitor terms. I don't know if you guys saw that, and obviously it's good to bid on competitors, but you want to be aware that you're doing it and have some control.
You can exclude those out.
I share your sentiment on that entirely. We isolate competitors because you want to consciously target competitors, like because they fundamentally act differently, like than anything you're going to do. So we take great care in making sure we isolate competitors. So you are 100% right. We've seen a influx of competitor stuff there, which isn't bad. We block it and move it. We tend to move it out and isolate it, but that's a lot of work, right? So gotta be careful.
Well, you bring up a good point, Leo. You can do the exclusions.
It's a little bit just like the what is that dynamic search, doesn't it? Feels like it's just a If you look at the interface menu, it seems like Google just put into a subfolder, repackage, and call it something different.
Totally.
Kinda,
What
yeah.
they're doing here is, and there's reason for this. There's actual like logical reason Google would be doing this, and it's mainly like everyone technically has access to the AI overview, like integrated ads that are starting to become. It's
Hmm.
starting. It's not that common at this point, but they exist, and it's going to become more common over time, right?
Yeah.
Because people are now leaning more and more onto long tail queries, which trigger these AI results, right? So
Right.
that's great stuff. But the what they've done is with this, now the checkbox for AI Max, it just makes you more likely to be in there. So it's essentially like
Mm,
if you really want to get into AI
Yeah,
Max results,
I think it also comes down to like the
interesting.
good old practice of SEO side, like kind of like content relevancy and all of this kind of starting to
yeah,
all become play as well. Like the way I look at AI Max and dynamic search to a more
mm,
stupid version, dumber version of that, it's the same thing. It's like kind of open up, letting all your asset expose, right? Your keywords, your landing page, your
yeah,
everything, and
Your
now even
ads, yeah.
whatever image you have, they're able to scan your image asset as well. Just let it all expose and letting the data decide what's the best optimization for you, right?
yeah,
And I think we just started like in May, so it's I mean still early phase, so it's still like a
yeah,
lot of stuff. I think it's
super early.
gonna be in this learning phase, but I feel like this is like a pocket interface allow us to see what the next phase of Google, it's gonna be like. How do you actually play these parameters in a different way on the AI overview?
Sure. I mean, I think it's like fundamentally many Google features have been like it works for some, it doesn't for others, and it kind of just depends how well you build those walls around it. That whether or not it'll stay working. And that's the other part too is stay working. So with it exploring all the time, you might have it working for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it finds and
Hmm.
explores and these new things. Beauty of those words, explore and learning,
Hmm.
they all just equal dollars. So
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. Is that's where it is. Is like fundamentally we all want our clients to be able to have X amount of dollars for text testing and stuff. But when testing
Right.
happens without the constraints of you making boundaries to those tests, well, that's just budget being eaten up that may have been better spent on other things. So you want to be able to control tests. What I don't like about what they're doing is they're essentially building these testing into everything, and that can be good. But if you already could spend $100,000 with hyper efficiency in a month or whatever, and generating real value, well, you exploring from that when you are already budget constrained into these pockets of things that are potentially of less value, well, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? You're taking budget away from things that do work for things that might work. So that's why testing budget, in my opinion, needs to be more incremental. But the way they're building it, you really don't have as much control of that as you used to, because now
Mhm.
Hmm.
fundamentally you hop into AI Max, you're testing, like right, or
Yeah.
like the
Yeah,
second you click that button.
there's very little control you have. Yeah, I mean, there's some asset like, exclusion and stuff that you can add to influence it. But I really think it ultimately comes down to your landing page plays a bigger role in that because Google really want to participate in that whole overall conversation.
Yeah,
They'll not just only want to serve you relevancy of the search result, but they also want that whole thing to be part of this conversation in the search result.
yeah, definitely. Now the current settings for it are kind of limited. You're like, can we use your whole site? And that, at least for most
Yeah.
of my clients, is a no. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like, no, why? Why would I want you to just,
Yeah.
yeah.
It starts going to
Yeah,
your blog or your contact us
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like
you're
these
like,
like
wow. You're
irrelevant.
like, yeah,
I
let's
mean,
drive traffic to pages that don't have a form or like
yeah.
actions, like which I've
Uh,
literally seen because when we first opted in, it's in the test. We're like, now you're driving traffic to like pages that just aren't like actual convertible pages. You know what I mean? Like you would have to
mhm.
really search for a form from some of those pages versus having readily accessible forms on certain. Because I don't know about you guys, but not every single page on everybody's site is ready to convert somebody. So
Yeah.
and
yeah,
so yeah, we want to control it within that. So more or less, we tend to not use the page exploration part, like you go forth and choose pages, but potentially
Hmm.
the ad, like customization, that for sure, that feature has some chops. But for some clients, there's regulatory and stuff like we can't say certain things, so you can't
mm,
let Google just
Yeah.
run free with wild. I mean, that just depends on the client, though.
And do you know? I know you were saying if you check AI what is it AI Max checkbox.
Yeah.
It's true that it is more likely to show up in AI overviews, and is that also true for AI
Yeah.
mode? Do you know?
I believe so. So like specifically the AI Max search specs, that's their new way to it gives you an increased advantage to show up there. Technically,
Okay.
every search ad has a chance,
Yeah.
but that's just
I think it's just like it's kind of saying you're participating in that, them able to training with your data as part of the like AI results in that case.
yeah.
And I feel like that's the step different from the old dynamic search. So because dynamic search, you still say Google, I want to be on the search result, but you're allowed to use my landing page, some of this stuff, right? This is sort of a step further, saying, give me a few parameters you want to make sure, but let me go crazy with everything you
Yeah.
have, so I can utilizing every asset you have to maximize serving our clients. I
Yep.
think that's what Google is trying to say.
Yeah, and I think, at the end of the day, there's a place for all of that. It's just, from our perspective, we just want reasonable controls on all these things, and they've gotten a lot of those back for us. So they didn't have it for years. They literally didn't allow you to put in negatives, and they didn't allow you to block certain distribution on these things, and now you can. Now their answer to that is they only show you half the queries. So we literally whack-a-mole things with 3 impressions sometimes, because we're like, it could have a giant, terrible thing underneath the surface. And so we tend to have to whack-a-mole things on tiny, tiny data at this point.
Do you know roughly, have you heard any reports on roughly what that percentage is of hidden search terms? I've heard different numbers. I don't know if you had one.
Well, I can tell just from our experience with our clients, and it varies between 40% missing to 70% missing sometimes.
Yeah, I've heard around that range too, which is kind of insane.
Wow.
Yeah. And just one quick question too on AI mode. Do you know, they haven't rolled out ads yet in AI mode, right? I've seen, or maybe I'm wrong about that.
There might be some beta. I don't know,
Yeah.
quite frankly, right as of this filming. If we've got, if there's certainly not wide distribution in that, but the AI overview, there's a tiny bit. I've actually only seen it live once, I think, an ad, but it does exist.
And it said sponsored.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I believe so. I'm again, it's it does exist, and within the AI overview, there are ads being tested in there, from my understanding, and that's what they're essentially selling with. At least that's what we're hearing anyway. Is that fundamentally this gives you a chance to be in that distribution, so it's worth the risk, but it'll become more worth the risk later. Right now, it's you got to think not everything.
As adoption.
It's not wide, right? So it's so that's why I can tell you right now, not every account. We're testing it in some accounts, and even within that, we're not testing it on everything. We're testing on 1 campaign or 3 campaigns or something.
What do you guys do to make sure you're more AI ready? I guess just curious, is there anything specific you do other than just test it? Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. Fundamentally, what we're talking about there is they're longer queries, right? They're more detailed queries. That's what they are, right? People are searching in more detailed ways, and it triggers AI results, and thus you have to have informational things that fit that. It just depends on the type of client, whether or not you have stuff that fits that bill, informational content like that.
So you're talking about still something very practical. It's going back to that relevancy game, right? Connecting, but now you have more info because we're allowing actually longer search term and commands and prompts.
The problem is that to give you that increase, they're essentially marrying the idea of AI Max with this, and what they're doing is then it changes your match type to AI Max, which is essentially broad match on steroids.
So let's take a step back, guys. Let's take a step back. Do you think, eventually this whole match type game, everything has to go away, right? We know it's not going to be it seems like
too.
Google is going to take.
I'm skeptical that it's going. I don't think it's going away. I think I would have thought that for years, but they just gave us negatives back on these
interface.
Things. I think the tide's turning back.
But no. What I'm saying is that it seems Google's strategy over the years, it always seems like taking more and more those granular, more definite kind of control away from us. Right? They're overall just getting, okay, here's a few things you can influence it. And back in the days, if you have the keywords, you got the keywords, right? But now it's maybe a lot of maybe, right? But yeah, they give you more parameters. Like these are the ways you could influence. So I'm kind of curious about Jared. Like, do you guys do any of those like all the stuff that along the side of the asset, like good practice, I'll do the site links and like
Oh yeah.
do you still do that for all of your clients? Do you think that still make a difference?
I mean, definitely. You want like all the different assets that you can have available. You should try to have them. I mean, you're only going to show ones that are valuable, but definitely like site links, images, the logos. Like, of course, you want that. Videos if you have it. Like, so not everything has videos, but you can create videos relatively simply nowadays. So you can at least have something, not necessarily great things, but you want all of those augments because they're becoming more and more important, and that stuff will probably become extra important, especially in the realm of AI, would be my guess, because those are rich content results, right, that you're getting from AI. Makes sense that more rich like assets might be inclusive in that at some point. I can't say they are all the time now, but it definitely makes sense. But on one comment you made about like the match types, like a few years ago, I would have thought they were trying to like take away all match types except for Google do thing match types. Google go forth and do things match type. But I think the tide must be turning because literally PMAX, you didn't have negatives, now you have negatives. Now you have visible search queries. So I think the tide went towards total black box, and then there's been enough pushback where now we're somewhere in between, and that's where I think we'll live. And I think even the breakout of having AI Max as part of, instead of it being part of PMAX, and now it's a separate entity, that is that segmentation coming back. So I think they went full black box for a while, and now they've had enough pushback from large advertisers to say we need to be somewhere in between. And they may still, I think a lot of people still, like fundamental small advertisers, right, that just don't spend that much. Well, a lot of them are in the smart search, like smart, like interface of that. You know what I'm talking about? Like the interface that's literally different.
That's
and
not Google Ads. Yeah, I mean, it is,
when you get an account that's in that, you're like, I don't know what to do here. You know what I mean? You're like, what is this? But that exists. That's a layer of just, hey, let Google handle it. That exists. But for big advertisers, and by big I mean anything, anything above like 10,000 all the way to $1 million, right? So like the little guys versus anywhere in between, there's plenty of reason to have the customization. I think we're finding a middle ground here, which is good. But the caveat to that is they're showing you less queries. So while the match type still exists, the negative still exists, they're not sharing the same amount of data.
Yeah, there's still that black box,
Exactly.
like you're saying.
We spend a lot of time on the keywords. I want to also kind of
That's
check
where I
in
live,
here.
Leo.
Wait, can I ask one? Can I ask one just real quick, Leo? And so just to kind of go off on what Jared was saying there, I've seen this a lot in the D2C e-com space where it's so hip to say go full broad. Oh, the bidding strategists will take care of it. Go full broad. Even on Meta, people are spending hundreds of thousands, in some cases a day, even hundreds of thousands a month on that quote unquote lower end.
Yep.
It's very hip to just say no, full broad works. We're doing that. But my thought is like in clients in industries that you work with, Jared, I think it would ruin everything. If all of a sudden you went full broad and you couldn't do exact and phrase.
Oh yeah.
Like and like you said, big advertisers I'm sure are talking to Google and like, hey, we need some control. You can test other things and optional, but like we still need the core to some degree.
Absolutely, because that's it. I mean, right now the shifts we're seeing back with increased additional like negative abilities and ability to like segment distribution within PMAX. Well, those didn't exist. Why would what motivation would Google have to give us back part of the black box? Right. It wasn't because mom and pop shops got upset. It's because big advertisers got upset.
Yeah,
and enough 100%. Of them. And so that's why I don't think it'll fully go away, because if it was, we would have went the other way. Instead, we've come back, which is a very healthy thing. Like we need the middle ground. But there's a place for all of it. I can tell you right now, certain advertisers, that is the right answer, right? Like a broad match only campaign. For our advertisers, no, it's definitely not. But But
I think sounds like what Jared you were saying, and it's something that I hear a few people been saying this, and I really concur as well. It's like it sounds like in the age of AI, there's all these tools available make it so easy to automate everything and play that scale game without really ever thinking about anything. Sounds
Yep.
like what you were saying is like it's quite the opposite. Is if you really lean in, take the time, really segment, understand the real content, the little things really matters, then segment diligently. There is tremendous amount of gain that is still happening in that efficiency gain.
Definitely. And like fundamentally, it's like you got to think, especially in the B2B space, which I keep going back to, it's like where it's not just a lead, it is a lead that could buy over a period of
Quality,
time.
yeah.
Quality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quality, you have to be able to take that data and find what that quality is on a granular level. And so the integrations with Google help with that, but that what has improved, but it didn't exist in a very robust way for a very long time and doesn't translate all the way down to the query level very well. So
Hmm.
you need to be able to make meaning out of pockets. Well, the way you can do that is by being able to look at your data that way and aggregate it up meaningfully. And so that structure helps you do that. Us having detailed structure where we can extract out themes and then take meaning from that theme and have it extrapolate out to, oh, well, these ones close at a rate of 27%, and these ones close at 12%, and so on and so forth,
Hmm.
right? Well, that allows us to optimize one layer sooner because again, all of this is like in a perfect world, if you have infinite dollars and you can just test and test and test and test, yeah, like there's a lot you can figure out and go
Yeah,
forth and prosper.
Yeah, for sure.
But we
I
have
think
clients
Jared,
that want results
That,
one step before
I
that,
think that's
right?
what
So,
happened
yeah.
too.
If
Yeah, Jared, I think we are coming out of time here. Usually, we like to ask our guests this question about because our show is called Hug Your Metrics. So we want to ask you like, what metrics are you hugging, and
oh,
like you've been keeping eye for yourself or whatever, right? And what metrics you see people are hugging that they shouldn't be.
oh, sure. Wow, that's a good question. I mean, for me, I still live at the search term level because that's fundamentally the where the battle is, even if they're only showing you half of it. That's that. So people don't spend enough time there, and they need to spend more time there in general, right? I mean, everybody here probably spends plenty of time there, but in general, more time looking at your search term reports and policing even the tiniest amount of data. Because if you see one little flash of data that they actually do show you, it's an iceberg, right? Below the surface, there's
Hmm.
more. So being able to
Yeah.
extrapolate that out to a larger impact and then apply phrase match negatives when you need to hit that is something enough people
Hmm.
don't do.
Sounds like
yeah,
go in
that's really
detail to learn the
interesting.
intent. Yeah, I love that. And then what shouldn't you be hugging metrics wise?
Um, Pure impression share is meaningless. Like, like pure just like here's impression share. Like exact impression share means a lot of things because it's
Hmm.
the words you intended to be on. Impression share that just covers broad match means all of the things that Google might invent for you to match to. So what does that mean? What does
Oh
that
my
mean?
God. Dude,
Nothing.
Yeah.
thank you for saying that. Especially you go back to check the math. Like Google have all these columns and impression share. They are so contradicting with each other. And they're like, we don't
Yeah,
share
they
all the
absolutely
data.
are. The math doesn't
They're just
actually
like,
pan
what do you
out. I
do? Like,
agree.
how could you have impression share of 100% and like not have enough budget? Like, what is going on?
Exactly.
And and uh,
Exactly.
and Jared, I want to ask just
Hmm.
on your previous response on looking at the search term report, and so
Hmm.
are the metrics? Is it we talked earlier about how you are bringing in sales qualified lead, marketing qualified lead. So is it just you're looking at like cost per MQL, cost per SQL,
Yeah.
or is it a different type of metric you're looking at there?
I mean, all of those back out, right? So
Yeah.
the answer is yes, but it's different for every single client depending on what their cycles look like. Uh,
Hmm.
but fundamentally, yeah, SQL, MQL, whatever their equivalent is, and then backing out to that earlier metric because you do have to, right? If it's a 6 month
Yeah.
sales cycle, you can't wait for the thing. You have to
Totally.
make a decision sooner. So you use those things to guide it along the way. And that's where that, like, at the smallest level, well, at the smallest level, you can really only look at affirmatives, right? Like, it takes a lot of dollars spent before you're like, this didn't turn into $1 million deal. Oh, I
Right.
didn't spend $1 million on that one term. That's
Yeah.
insane, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
the reverse is if you see something positive, you can definitely lean in, right? So,
Yeah, and then from a reporting, I guess tied into that from a reporting standpoint, I'm curious, what you guys are doing now. Do you do custom reports? Do you lean on a platform like Looker Studio? And then what are the most important metrics to the client? Is it just that cost per quality lead, or are there other metrics that they want to hear you talk about, when you report to them?
It definitely depends on the client, but yeah, it's I can say for some of our clients, it's like a cost per quoted or something, right? They do like quote-based stuff, but it's something way deeper in the cycle. We tend to never really look at the first lead. It's always at least a qualified lead, whatever that is for that client. It's different for the whole spectrum of things, but some of them it's actual revenue, because it can be, if the sales cycle is close enough, where it's maybe only a 3 or 4 month sales cycle, something like that, well, we'll get revenue. So we'll be able to eventually get there. We just have to wait. We'll still use for every, if we're on a call looking at recent weeks and months, we're still looking at cost per, sales qualified and stuff like that. One step out, we're like, oh, now we're looking back at something 4 months ago, and we're like, oh, now we're making more macro decisions based on what it actually turned into. But it just depends on that. So from a reporting perspective, we do customize to each one of those. So we both pump the data into Google, right, using like the offline conversions and the integrations like Salesforce and stuff, or like CRM integrations directly to there. But those tend to be incomplete. So on top of that, we do our own back-end reporting, which is more complete, that we use, systems we've built that, it's totally different. But whatever it is, we do use Looker sometimes, Tableau sometimes. Just depends on what the client's using.
Cool. And so completely customized for pretty much every client, right? Just like you said, I mean, there's similarities, because a quality lead is a quality lead, but it's what is a quality lead is different to everybody. So
exactly. So for us, like the base starts at a very similar spot, and then it ends up just getting more detailed from that, as long as they have that, because you'll have some clients that don't have that sophisticated CRMs, and you have to get them there. Because even if they have a CRM, they may not be using it to its full capacity. Then you'll have some that are super advanced. So it's the whole spectrum for sure. But bottom line, it's encouraging them to go as detailed as they need to be to provide the real value, and us to be able to use that data for optimization. But it's a feedback.
It always seems like the more accurate the data is, the less data they have, right? It's like more down the funnel on the actual sales. But the more you have to guess, the more frequent and availability that data point tend to have. With that, I actually am gonna cut you guys out. I know Jared.
We can talk for hours.
I know. I can go for another couple hours.
Yeah, right.
So
we'll have to connect soon outside of this and just.
Absolutely.
You want to go back to that improv game earlier?
There you go. Let's do it.